Okay, welcome. I'd like to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. We have a lot of people today. It's great. So we hope every time we have a meeting, we have this many people. A lot of fun. The first thing we have is assignment for request for council action. We have a lot for the Finance Committee. We have 18120 job creation grant payment for Sandwich Food Corporation, 18121 job creation grant agreement for Craft Works Engineering LLC, 18122 2019 tax budget, 18123 Zurcher Technologies Computer Aided Dispatch and Report Management System Suite for the Police Department, 18124 Accounts Payable Clerk Pay, 18125 Memo of Understanding for the City of Medina Railway, 18126 2018 Pavement Marking Program, 18127 2018 Concrete Pavement General Services Program, 18128 new chapters 909 and 911 regarding small cell wireless facilities and structures, 18129 review and discuss city sidewalk program, 18130 CHIP private rehab change order for 3439 Grafton Road, and 18131 Memorial Park special events policies discussion. We have 18083 installation of natural gas main line and service. Mr. Picoli?
Thank you, Mr. President. So I brought this back on to finance. We have a discussion with respect to the installation of the new gas line. Currently, there's not gas on either three sides of the airport property. I'm not sure if Mr. Olson was here, kind of crowded. I don't know if he was here, he's going to try to be here.
Nope.
So the discussion is, the mainline extension is at a cost of $57,905 and some change, and that would allow for a 1,400-foot mainline extension from the north side of Route 18, a bore on 8th Street, and then across the airport property, again, 1,432 feet, 6-inch mainline. So again, that cost is $57,905.58, and our discussion was, do we pay for that? Does Medina Flights or Medina Services pay for that? Currently the property was served with an oil well for the past 20 years, oil and gas well, which supplied approximately 740 MCF for the buildings for heating purposes. That went to successorship to another company, and they shut the well off. There was some issues with the sales line. So the long and short of it is the well is shut off, and the owner of the Medina Flight Services had to change all the heating elements over to propane, and I believe, I don't know if I submitted that to you, the incurred costs of $24,339 over the course of this past winter with regard to heating the building, the administration building, and then the mechanic shop, and then one of the hangars as well. So that's where we're at. If we're going to go forward, the agreement would need to be executed with Columbia Gas, and obviously we have to have the funding mechanism worked out.
So what you're asking is that currently there's no natural gas servicing the airport, there's propane, and in order for it to get it serviced, somebody has to pay $57,905.58.
That's correct.
Either flight services, or the city, or some other combination. Thoughts?
I read the agreement, and it said something about payback or reimbursement. Could you elaborate on that,
A
please?
little bit about that. The main line was not extended from the airport property, so if this main line goes forward, and then for the next 7 years, if someone were to tap into the main line that extended across the airport property, there would be a revenue reduction with respect to the cost of the city or Medina Flight Services. So that would be whether it was on the north side of Route 18 on the frontage of the airport property, or whether it was a continuation east of the main line. So then, and that's for a 7-year duration, I believe.
Okay, so if nobody taps in 7 years, it goes away.
That's correct.
Not correct.
So some of some of the questions are, well, can't we use the well or use it, and that's kind of not an option because we have no control over the current well there, even though there may be some ability to have some natural gas out of it. It's out of our control as far as use. It's in the owner of the well's control. The other question dealt with, well, can't we just tap off of the Portside, industrial park and put a 2-line, because they already have a 6-inch line there, and that doesn't really work because I don't think we're permitted to, first of all.
We asked about that, that's,
Because that would be more cost effective to put a 2-inch line off that instead of running a whole new 6-inch line all the way the frontage of the
Why aren't
airport.
we permitted to?
I don't think they won't let us do a tap into it.
when that bore was conducted, from what I understand, whatever year it was for Portside, they went from the north side, they'd be Columbia Gas, underneath Route 18 to the Portside property, and it was enough for that development as they approached the new business group, such as we're approaching the new business group for our plan. And so it wasn't thought out by the owners at the time, as well as the utility, to say, okay, what if the airport property were to extend the main line? So we would have a new bore underneath Route 18 and then extend across the frontage likewise.
57.
So if we if we put this money in, would flight service pay, will we be reimbursed for this money, or will it be over time, or is that not part of it? This would be simply us.
Mhm.
And so this is not the responsibility then of flight services?
The lease basically says that the flight services is responsible for payment of utilities. When the lease was originally entered into, this gas well was supposed to be, it had such high pressure, it was supposed to be good for another 50 years. So it was anticipated that the fuel source would be the gas well, and there was never any thought given to an owner taking over and shutting it down, which under gas well law they can do. They did it. So flight services has a responsibility and generically to pay for normal utility costs, but nobody anticipated not having any heat source.
So we have a joint, we've had a joint benefit with, by having it operated the way it is and operated so well. And then we have, though, contributed along the way here a significant amount of money that we hope to get a return on. The jet fuel.
We have FAA grants that we try to
that
assist in,
we
right?
get assistance from, so. And they cannot afford, am I right, that they can't afford to, or what was their response?
Well, it's a large capital investment. So the
Yeah.
question is, the way I look at it, is that the lease is silent one way or the other about the installation of utilities. So nobody knows who's really responsible to pay for that. However, the airport, there's not many regional or municipal airports throughout the country, and there's a value to a municipal airport, to its use, I think. Because if you have something somebody else doesn't have, well, it's more valuable to you as a community. So the question would be, do we say, okay, we're gonna pay off $57,000, and the next question is, where'd that money come from? Or, I think it would be fair because the lease is silent, and it's a huge financial burden on the owner side or flight services side just to pay it themselves, and it's a huge financial burden in my mind for us to pay, so why don't we split it? That way we both contribute towards the solution to the problem, and we both get a benefit from it. We get to keep the airport, and hopefully flight services continues to operate.
I understand the value of the airport. We bought it when I was mayor. And SACD actually from Cleveland, Cleveland was attempting to buy that airport and had no interest in the opinions or the concerns of the township officials at the time. They were pretty much overjoyed when we did buy it. And I guess if you look at it again, like I said, we've had a good relationship. We gain, they gain. I think that's a good way to go forward, probably would be to.
Well, it's an unanticipated cost.
Can we split it because it isn't addressed? I would be okay with that.
Well, I guess the other question is that if we do nothing, I don't know if he'd be able to afford to do it. Maybe he would do it, maybe he wouldn't do it. I mean, it's a huge cost. And I don't know what the recoupment period of that would be. You have to, the recoupment, as far as people joining the line, you'd have to hope somebody joined in order for them to get some money back. But you only have 7 years before that horizon, is gone. And, I mean, I don't know, what do you do in a situation like this when there's no documentation that gives you guidance that was entered into an agreement between the parties?
I think what you suggested. You
Yeah.
suggested a good middle ground, you know. I
At
think
least
that
a
should
starting
be-
point.
But I don't know, that hasn't been discussed with Earl, has it?
We asked him to pay, and he asked us to pay, that's as far as it got, so, I mean, I agree.
So we could be
that's-
equally
that's
unhappy.
good. Well, it's good middle ground. I mean, you have to understand from his perspective, he's put in, as the city has, but ours is grant money, only a 5% match. And then there are contingencies on those grants that if something happens, then we have to pay those back if we don't continue the operation. So we have to be careful too, if somebody walks away from it, because now we have to make it continue to work, or we're on hook for all of those grants for the last 20 years. But he feels that he's done a great deal of investment in the hangars. When the lease is done, the city has those upgraded hangars and improvements that he's done. So, you know, that's kind of the balance that we're trying to go back and forth here. If that seems reasonable to council, Mr. Huber and I can have another meeting with Earl. And it may be that he thought the meeting was at 6, because at the time we had the meeting, the
I got you.
agendas weren't out yet, and I'm not sure that he knew.
That's probably him.
And again, if you look at the savings, did you all get that spreadsheet that?
No, Nino
provided
didn't.
From Columbia Gas?
Nino, do you have those?
Well, it shows that the savings from natural gas versus propane is about $18,000 a year. So it would take 3 years to recoup it. If we did a 50-50 split, it would take a year and a half for him to recoup it, of not paying for the higher.
That was $1.94 a gallon.
Right. Which seems reasonable.
Yes.
I mean, we have to figure out then, our question is, where do you think the money's gonna come from?
Go ahead.
Well, the only, I just wanted to co-tell on what Mayor Hamwell said is, you know, the last time Mr. Olson was here, he did share with us how much of his own personal money that he's put into flight services, which I was amazed the amount. So I think what you're suggesting, I think would be equitable, if he's agreeable to it. And, you know, a year and a half payback sounds a lot better than 3. Yeah, than 3.
And Keith, since it's, we could either use the general fund account, the 100 accounts, or 301, can we use capital in a situation like
Yeah,
this?
this is a capital item, you can use capital account.
So I would, I mean, if we were doing, I would take it out of 301.
Right.
I wouldn't hit the general fund. Yeah. Or even unanticipated, but then Keith wants to fill that back up.
Right, I would.
If I may have one more quick point, and then Mr. Olson did pay just under $4,000 to convert the elements to propane, and that'll have to be reversed once, if you do choose.
Did he save the parts? He could just,
It's the cost of changing that back over, so we're looking at $8,000, so he has
Understood.
fee, it costs more than this.
Go ahead. Is there any way we can recoup some of the costs, say in landing fees or anything like that?
well, again, his operation, my understanding of his operation is it's a lean operation out there. When this started way back when, I always thought that, you know, maybe there is some other way to generate revenue for the city, but as time has shown us, there's not.
So I'm just wondering, okay, what are we charged to use the hangars for?
Unless something changes, in other words, technologies are changes, so something may change in the future, but you can't count on that.
Right. Just looking at a way to increase the revenue coming in from the airport. That's all.
Well, we tried with the jet fuel, hopefully that we'd have
Yeah,
more people.
So that one. Okay. All right.
Question.
No.
So you guys okay with that? You
And
wanna
have-
go back and talk to him about
Seems
that?
reasonable.
Okay.
Or if he comes, I guess, right? They could just cut in if he shows up.
Okay.
I don't know.
We're still here, so it could be a possibility. Okay, 18120, job creation grant payment for Sandridge. Kimberly?
Thank you, Mr. President. In 2013, Sandridge Food Corporation invested $13 million for facility improvements, including construction of a 28,000 square foot addition at the 133 Commerce Drive facility. And at that time, they had estimated to create 100 new full-time positions and $3.6 million in payroll by 2015. Our Business Development Committee that reviews the grants annually met with the company on June 6th to review their progress, and it was noted that they have created 184 full-time positions with payroll of $11.5 million. So not only have they met their goal, they have exceeded the job creation goal and have exceeded the payroll by 321.93%. which qualifies them for the full grant. All of the information has been verified with Rita, and we request that council approve the 2017 job creation grant payment of $22,500, which is the maximum they can receive under the program. And just as a reminder to council and to the public, that funding for this program comes from non-income tax generated revenues. Thank you.
Questions? Move to approve the payment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 18-121 job creation grant agreement for Craft Works Engineering. Kimberly?
Thank you, Mr. President. This request is for the mayor to enter into a job creation grant agreement with Craftworks Engineering LLC for the purpose of establishing a business located at 935 Heritage Drive, creating 45 new full-time positions to the city of Medina by 2021. Craftworks Engineering will have an investment of approximately $4 million into this project, and with the 45 new full-time positions, the payroll would be a little over $3,010 to the city of Medina, with the bulk of the jobs coming online in 2019. And then you'll see in your packet, you had the schedule there, a few more in 2020, and then the last two in 2021. The agreement will provide them with a grant up to 40% of new payroll taxes to the city of Medina for 6 years. And we do respectfully request approval of the job creation grant agreement. The law director has reviewed and approved the draft agreement that you have received in your packet. Again, the Business Development Committee met to review the project with the applicant, and they have recommended this application for approval to council. And then again, the job creation grants are paid for from non-income tax generated revenues.
Questions?
Move to approve the job grant.
Second.
No, I think, am I correct that the taxes that we receive that are non-residential business industry taxes, does it exceed 50% of our revenue? Am I right on that, Keith? Or does 50% of our revenue come from business and industry? Is that?
Usually that number is cited as percentage of property tax.
Okay.
And as far as our income tax, I don't have that. The difficulty is if somebody is it's an allocation issue. If you both work and live in the city,
Right.
then what should I count that as?
Yeah.
Because clearly if you live in Lodi and work in the city, then that tax we get because of the industry being here.
Right.
Or if you live here and work in Cleveland, that tax we get because of you living here. I don't know how we would allocate, how we would treat the tax as both.
Anyway, thanks, because my point is I think lots of times we forget because we live in neighborhoods and don't drive through the industrial area or, pay attention to these larger businesses that you work with, how significant and important that pool of revenue that we get from those folks that work there and the businesses being located there, and the work that you do to keep them here or to help them expand, that you bring to us is significant. And it's critical to us as a community so that we can operate with the revenues that we have, rather than losing these businesses or having businesses shrink up with less employees. All of this just adds up to the pool of money that we have to use for the good of the community. And so that was my point.
Yes.
But thank you for that work,
No,
because that is significant to the welfare of the community.
Yes, no, I agree with what you're saying. I thought at one point there was a chart somewhere that kind of outlined what you were saying. But
So did I. I didn't know if the chamber knew that or not, but anyway,
Okay.
it is
It's
important.
property tax.
It was
The
property.
chart you're talking about is
Yeah, that was
property
property
That was
tax,
property
yeah.
tax.
But my point remains the same.
Yeah.
It
But
is
as long as we can
significant.
convince the state not to take their money, then we'll be.
Yeah, I think Paul's working on that. so.
Thanks, Paul. So, any other questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 18-122, 2019 tax budget. Keith?
You have the tax budget in front of you now. So you understand what this is. It does not actually control our spending. That's the budget process that we're working our way through. This is just estimates that the county uses to give us our estimate of revenues and resources, which tells us what we're allowed to spend.
And inside and outside millage, what is our limit? Is it 10, 5? I thought, is it 10?
What you're talking about, the inside millage, we get 2.2, that's allocated by the county to the various governmental subdivisions, and then ours is divided between, or pardon me, we get 3.2, it's divided between general fund and OPF, which is police retirement. Outside millage is any tax that we have to ask the voters for. Inside millage we just get. Outside millage we have to ask for. The only outside millage we have presently is the EMS levy. The inside millage is just what the county allocates to us.
Anybody have any questions? And we did modify that last year, or this year, commencing this year, by adding more being allocated to the police pension.
Right, we've been running deficits in the police pension fund for the last 7 years, so we're putting a little bit more in there to keep that even.
Okay,
Move to approve.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 18-123, expenditure for Zurcher, I think that's correct, Technologies Computer Aided Dispatch and Report Management Systems Suite.
Thank you,
Chief.
Mr. President. It's Zerker Technologies, computer-aided dispatch and records management system. This essentially is our hub for the police department. It's what we put all of our calls into, our computer-aided dispatch, our 911 calls go into it. The officers do their reports in it, maintain our names database, equipment, essentially everything in the department operates out of this system. To give you a little historical perspective of the situation we're in, a little over a year ago, Zerker Technologies purchased Emergitech, which is our current CAD RMS vendor. They purchased that software and told us that they were no longer going to develop it. So it was never going to improve any more than it is now. And based on today's standards, it's a substandard system. So what they have done is offered us significant discounts to upgrade to their Zerker suite, the product they provide. Prior to getting into that, we demoed and researched several other records management systems and CAD systems, including Spillman, which is what we were on probably about 8 or 9 years ago. When the quotes came in for prices, we narrowed it down to Zerker and Spillman. When the quotes came into prices, Spillman was over $800,000, and Zerker came in at $171,112. I intend on paying for that with my carry forward, with the department's carry forward funds. With regards to the maintenance fees that we pay for Emergitech currently, we're at $68,000 yearly for that. By switching to this system, our year one maintenance fee will be $39,568. That has the potential to increase each year up to 5%, not over 5%, but up to 5%. That doesn't mean that it's actually going to increase.
And on a non-cumulative basis, as we talked about, so it
Right.
doesn't, okay.
Yes, sir.
Those numbers are spelled out in the contract.
Yes, sir.
Exactly what the maximum they could be.
Now, the way we're getting an additional discount with the system is we're collaborating with the Sheriff's Department on this entire system. So the primary server will be housed at the Sheriff's Department. We have a fiber link between Medina Police Department and the Sheriff's Department. So the folks that they dispatch for and they provide that service to will connect through VPNs to the Sheriff's Department. The folks that we dispatch for, Medina Township, Montville Township, Medina Fire, LST, they will all VPN into our building, which then will be transported over that fiber link to the Sheriff's Department. That fiber link is necessary because the redundant server, the backup server, will be housed here at the police department. So we have that disaster recovery and that redundancy for the system. So if for some reason it goes down at the Sheriff's Department, with a flip of a switch and a little bit of routing, they can bring the warm server up and it can serve as the primary server here at Medina Police Department.
And the initial maintenance contract's 5 years.
Correct.
And then after that 5 years, I mean, we're up to.
When we renegotiate, by 5 years, we may be upgrading anyway to the latest and greatest.
Mhm.
And we may be having the same conversation.
That this
With
end
software.
user license agreement covers any of the upgrades during that time.
Right.
So we do get free upgrades during that time.
Okay.
But it's kind of like the operating systems that you get. They'll upgrade your Windows, but then they come out from Windows 7 to Windows 10. They may come from Zerker 5 to Zerker 10.
And this Zerker, as far as nationwide, what percentage do they supply to? Do you have any idea? I mean, what is the lead provider of this software?
Their parent company is TriTech, and that's a larger CAD RMS 911 provider for large departments. I don't know that Los Angeles PD uses TriTech, but for example, department size, they would serve a department that size. Zerker is the medium-sized police departments, such as ours. I don't have a market share of exactly.
But I guess we want
contract
to,
with.
we want to be able to talk to the surrounding communities. That's why we want to try to get the same.
Well, and that's why we're collaboratively going in with the project with the sheriff's department. So by doing so, we'll have shared data across the villages, the townships in Medina County, with the exception of Hinckley and Brunswick Hills Township. Wadsworth and Brunswick are still on their own systems, but everyone else will be on the Zerker platform.
One more thing, I want to thank Chief Kinney for his excellent negotiating skills. He had the sheriff's department pay for that link. It's between the city and the county, so we don't have to pay for it.
Oh, we have though.
Oh, yeah, in another way, yeah, but on this one, no.
Any other questions?
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
And then this will go at our next meeting in July, and then, when's the implementation, you said by fall?
9 months.
Oh, 9
From the
months.
signing of the end user license.
But it'll start-
Approximately.
Okay.
Right, the motion, the wheels will start.
Okay. Okay,
So part of the reason for the emergency clause was that lower price was only for a fixed amount of time. We got hung up because the link, the fiber link was not established. And the sheriff's department had already signed theirs, already got the reduced price when we realized that we needed that connection piece. So it took us a little while to get that worked out with them. They're holding the price for us, but only until mid-July.
It was actually March, and then they extended it to May, and they've now extended it again just to accommodate us. Should we make it subject to what?
The contract.
Yeah.
If he hasn't
He has not, it's not approved.
I'll amend my motion to include subject to final review of the law director.
Second.
so Mr. Huber, you have a little work now. Thanks, you can thank the chief.
No, he looks really happy. You see.
He has it.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thanks, chief. 18-124, accounts payable clerk pay. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. President. I put in this request, as I explained in the request, a couple things. Number one is we're currently looking for our 5th accounts payable clerk in a little over a year. Liz was in that position and we promoted her up to payroll, and then we've been playing musical chairs with that position. We'd really like to get somebody who would be willing to stay. The salary of the position currently, first of all, looking within the city, it's just not commensurate with other positions of that level of responsibility. If you look at the positions that are paid at level 5, they're part-time, and like my receivables clerk, they don't have nearly the level of responsibility that the person who handles accounts payable for all the city's bills does. We did look at some other positions around the area. It's kind of all over the board. One of the things that's difficult with that is you don't really know what the position entails and how much it is. There's some cities where it's a little bit less, but they have more people in their finance departments. They have more sort of middle management supervision, and then there's some other cities where it's higher. I feel like this is justified by what the position entails, and I'm having difficulty keeping people in the position, which I think is not entirely because of pay, but I think it's related to it, and I think that this would help us to be able to fill that position on a permanent basis.
Questions?
Yeah.
My question is, how many people applied for the position last time? I mean, I think there was a bunch.
We had a number of applicants. Lorene puts that all together and collates it for us. We interviewed about 8. What I do know is we had 2 last time that we thought were good for the position. Lori was in, I had Lori here with me, she's a deputy finance director. Lori was in on interviewing those. We had 2 people at that time that we felt were good for the position. We hired one, she's moving to Florida. The other one we contacted as soon as this opening came up again, and she's taken a position with the county in the interim. So, I mean, I don't really keep track of how many applicants we get, because I don't even get the complete list from Lorene. Lorene is very helpful at that, at sorting down to people that are reasonably qualified, and then we start from there. I think we interviewed 10, and we felt 2 were people we were comfortable hiring.
You just said that the person holding the position is moving to Florida. How would more pay keep her here and not moving to Florida?
Well, I'm not, I said before, I don't think it's entirely pay-based. I think it might. I mean, I know that I don't know everything about her personal situation. She's an employee, but she said, she and her husband decided to move back down to Florida, where he's from, she's from up here. I don't think that you can necessarily say that it would or wouldn't, but I think when you're having that discussion in a family, how much money you're making it where you are is part of that discussion. You understand what I mean? The more she's making here, the more likely they would have been to stay, I would guess.
I don't know either. I'm just curious.
No, I mean, I understand the question, because if she really wanted to go to Florida, then it wouldn't make any difference at all. But,
Yeah,
if
exactly.
they're weighing options of saying, what are his job prospects, what are her job prospects, what she makes here is a relevant consideration then, and would be for anybody in this position.
And the reason for the other people leaving, you said, what, 5?
Well, we had one who we hired who lasted like 4 hours and decided that accounts payable was way too much for her, and she didn't want to do that. And then we had one who was there for a few months and left. And I think that there was a lot to the position, and she decided to move on. Liz, we're looking for 5.
Well, I guess the top pay right now is $47,320, which it isn't, you get an increase every year from the cost of living adjustment beyond that. And if you change it to level 7, the top pay is $52,166. And to me, you're getting close to the department head level, management level pay. So the question really is, and I asked Keith this, can't you start somebody out in level 5 at a higher pay? Like we had somebody in the Border Patrol where you start them out, instead of level A, they start at level C or D. I mean, because each year, remember, they get a 5% raise, step raise, no matter what. So if you start them out higher, isn't that more of a benefit that you start them out maybe at 45,000?
And as you know, because you're one of the people that signs off on it, when we hire people for a position, we can start them at above the bottom step. And I have to sign off on that, no matter what department it is. It's the council president, the mayor, and I have to sign off on that. I'm certainly not gonna rule that out. If we get somebody who's, generally the way that's written, my understanding is you're supposed to go for somebody who has the experience and so on, so you do that when you get somebody good and that has the experience. I don't think that makes as big of a difference as you're thinking, because I think most people are looking at these positions, you understand when you're going into government, what you want to know is what's the top. If I take a position, when I started at the state auditor's office, where's the top? Because that's where you're going to go, you're going to get a step every year. If I start somebody at D instead of A, they get there quicker, but the top out is still the same.
Well, they still get some every year, but 2% usually we give them.
And the other thing that I'll say, just to interject this, is understand that this is called level 5. I don't think anybody in the city is paid at 1, 2, 3, or 4. 5 is where we start people. Now, we have rec center people that are paid below that, but they're not on the same pay scale, they're paid on a rec center scale. So this is, but this is the bottom pay that we use for any clerical staff around the city is 5.
I understand, I'm just trying to figure out, I'm not convinced that the people aren't coming and staying because of pay. I think that there's other issues, moving, family issues, maybe they don't like the job once they get it. I mean, it's kind of a tough job, right? I mean, you have to like accounting. And you have to like, there's a barrier right there, sorry.
You can always count on John. He nails it, right?
So that's a problem. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you look at who was there, if the other person is still interested, that was the top 2 of your picks, if they're still interested, maybe you say, well.
We contacted her right away, and she has another position.
Already.
Yeah.
I mean, where's everybody else then?
Tell me again how many people applied the last time?
It's like 75.
Say what?
It was about 75.
75 people applied at that rate.
75 applied, we interviewed 10, we felt like 2 were good for that position.
So, I don't know, number 75 tells me, I don't think it's the pay.
Well, I guess, the objection that I have to this 75 number, because I've been asked this a couple times, how many people applied. I don't care how many unqualified people apply. Lorene cuts that number down to the 10 that we interviewed who we felt were reasonably qualified, and we felt like 2 were good for the position. So to me, I mean, if I only had 2 applicants and they're both good for the position, I'm happy. If I have 400 applicants and none of them are good for the position, that doesn't do me any good. So I don't care about that, how many people applied. I care how many are a good fit for the position and are actually qualified for the position. I mean, I think throwing out the 75 number is,
Well, let's assume that we agree with you. Where's the money coming from?
for the first few years of this, we'll take it out of carry forward, but when I'm back for my 2024 budget next time,
You don't have it right.
I'll be at the top step.
It could be, maybe you picked the wrong, out of the 10, could it be that you missed the person who would have stayed?
Well,
Because you narrowed it down to 2 that you said you thought would work, and the others were, so far off that they,
there was a fairly significant gap on the test scores, and I did not interview this myself. I interviewed this with Lorraine and Lori, and we had test scores and then interviews, and when we got back together after getting through the interviews, we immediately all had the same top 2. And we felt like, okay, these are the 2 we want to look at, and they also were the 2 highest test scores, and they were the 2 that we felt were good for the position. Now, of those 2, you may be entirely correct that we may have gotten that wrong, and if we'd hired the other one, we'd be okay.
I think you did get it wrong, actually. I mean,
Yeah,
they
it certainly
didn't
seems
stay.
like it since she's moving to Florida.
Yeah.
But she's done a great job. I mean, I don't think we picked wrong in the sense that, I think everybody in the city, the other department heads would tell you they're happy working with her. And we're all sad to see her go. I mean, I think we got it right in terms of we have a good person in that position.
But then she left because she moved, though, right? Ever moving, or, right? Okay, so that's not,
So,
well, I guess what
They
we.
couldn't control that. Her
No,
husband
no,
lost his job.
yeah, no, I know that, yeah.
We offered to try to help find him a job.
I understand that.
Yeah, there's 2,000 jobs available in the city, but it helped him decide he wanted to go back to Florida.
Yeah, I understand that. But then when you go through your carry forward, then we'll have to figure out where to get the money.
Yeah, I mean, in year 5.
but I guess the question that Keith is, that he's requesting additional funds for the position. The question on us is, do you want to do that? Do you think that is the issue, and you want to change the steps to prevent additional funds to go? Because again, right, you change the pay level, it's cumulative, of course, right? Every year it's more, it doesn't go back down, so. Anybody have any thoughts?
My only thought is if we increase this up to the 7, and then you end up in the exact same spot where you still have high turnover, then what's next? Then it obviously has nothing to do with the pay, and you're stuck at paying at a higher rate out of your budget.
Could happen.
And that's
I agree.
possible.
I agree. What I would rather see is maybe have this accounts receivable
Payable.
junior, and then put in something accounts receivable senior, and, you can change the title however you want. And give the folks who last longer, maybe the longevity, give them a bigger carrot to reach for down the road that may help them stay. Because I agree with Laura, that we could very easily end up right where we are because of workload, family position, what have you. Whereas if you have that carrot, it may entice them to stay longer. You understand?
Where's the carrot coming from?
No, there's-
Paul's telling me to come back in 5 years and ask for a raise for the person I hire now.
while we could look and see how that, where Keith can come with it for his carry forward. But I don't think right now, I don't think giving you the increase is gonna solve your problem.
Well, I think that if he chooses a higher step, that gets the person to the top faster, right? I mean, you can start them out right at the top level.
But the top is here, whether they start here or here. This is all further they're gonna go. Whereas.
With a
if you
cost of
put that
living
in-
adjustment on top of it.
Right, but if you put in that intermediate step, if you will, or the senior position, or whatever you want to call it, they'll have, let's see, if I do all these things here, I can get to the top of this, and then I like this job, I can stay here, and now I can move to
Okay.
this level and carry.
So I hear you saying, keep it the same. What are you saying?
Well, I do agree that money is important. I mean, we all agree on that, but I mean, the wage may be too low for the amount of responsibility this person has. But my fear is what you're saying, if we go to your steps, moving to this upper step, in 2024, unless, your carry forward continues to increase, the city's gonna be in bind for where do we find the funds. I like your idea of moving them, up to the top. And they're still, historically anyhow, they're still gonna get the cost of living raise that will continue to bump them up, but not as drastically as this. But I do agree that, yeah, hey, maybe, a partial reason why, because of the responsibilities that you're having a hard time for retention.
I think I would like you to give you more flexibility to place them and see where we're at when you go through this round of interviews as opposed to, because I don't know how you're gonna pay for it after the carry-over funds run out.
So Keith, it sounds like you're coming back if you need to try. So try with what you have and come back and talk to us, I guess.
Yeah, we do.
That's what I'm hearing. Okay. All right. Next one is, I don't think we have to vote on that, do we? I don't think we have to make one. Okay, non-discrimination legislation from various speakers, Pam, Sandy, Amy, and Joe. I don't know who's the leader, Pam?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Pam Miller, 450 Woodland Drive, Medina, and I'm here tonight with Medina area residents Sandy Varndell, Amy Demlow, and Joe Mataseski with the request for council action to enact a non-discrimination ordinance that would make Medina a truly inclusive city by protecting rights that are not currently covered by civil rights laws, the rights of gay and transgender individuals. You may not know that Ohio is one of only 28 states where it's still legal to fire someone or deny housing or access to public accommodations because that person is gay or transgender. Anecdotally, we know that this has occurred in Medina County. Unless the state of Ohio passes broad legislation, it's up to local communities to be proactive. The city of Medina can take a leadership role and become the 21st city in Ohio to pass a non-discrimination ordinance, joining neighboring cities such as Akron, Cleveland, Olmsted Falls, Lakewood, Kent, Youngstown, Cleveland Heights, and South Euclid. As you'll recall, at the urging of the Medina Diversity Project in 2015, you passed a resolution that affirmed the city's ongoing commitment to diversity. Now we're asking you to take that commitment a step further to enact legislation that includes protections, a remedy process, and enforcement guidelines for sexual orientation and gender identity or expression. Diversity, inclusion, acceptance reflect the community's values, and they're also crucial economic development and workforce issues. Businesses around the state, as well as locally, support non-discrimination because they know it will help them attract employees, and because it's the right thing to do. As your resolution stated, the city of Medina believes that diversity strengthens our community, enhances economic growth, and is vital to the quality of life that makes Medina a superior place to live and work. You also pledge to reject discrimination of any kind and to continue to respect the inherent dignity of every person without regard to race, color, national origin, religion, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, age, family status, or military status. So we ask that you pass a law now that will back this up and ensure that all residents of Medina can live and work in our city without fear of discrimination. And I should mention that June is Pride Month, so it couldn't be a more appropriate time for council to address the inequalities that are faced by the LGBTQ community. Sandy, Amy, and Joe can now offer some more personal perspective on why this is so necessary. Sandy.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Sandy Varndell, and I live at 1014 Smoke Rise Drive here in Medina. I'm a licensed social worker and employed by the Medina County Office for Older Adults. My husband Eric and I are the proud parents of two young adults, aged 24 and 20, both Medina High School graduates. Ross is a Kent State graduate with a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing, and he is currently serving our country through AmeriCorps. He is transgender. Our daughter Clara is a rising junior at Kent State. She is currently serving our community as an intern with Auditor Mike Kovac's office, assigned to the Medina County Health Department. She's bisexual. I'm here tonight to show you how important it is to my family and to many other families here in our town that Medina offer legal protections in employment, housing, and public accommodation. We want all our children to feel safe and protected. This meeting was prompted by a conversation I had with Mayor Handel about 2 months ago. I called him to discuss the inequalities that LGBTQ people face, both here in Medina and at a statewide level. He listened politely, asked some very good questions, and seemed genuinely concerned that discrimination might take place in our city. He advised me to work with City Council, and so here we are. I'm also the president and founder of OutSupport Inc., a local grassroots organization dedicated to the support, education, and advocacy for LGBTQ persons in Medina and the surrounding areas. We started offering monthly support group meetings here in Medina in 2013. The group meetings average between 30 and 50 attendees each meeting, and the population is generally LGBTQ teens and their parents, as well as LGBTQ adults. Since 2013, we've welcomed approximately 500 individuals and offered them information and support for their journeys. Attendees have come from the Medina area and also 13 surrounding counties. We developed and have offered to interested groups an educational program we call Transgender 101, which teaches the basics of what it means to be transgender. We've spoken to numerous businesses and organizations, such as the employee resource groups at Westfield, Goodyear, and Lubrizol, the Medina County Library System, and Medina High School in-service training programs, as well as to about a dozen other churches and organizations. We have spoken to approximately 500 interested persons who want to learn how to be a better ally, employer, or friend. As for advocacy, we hosted a Pride March on the Square last summer, drawing about 130 participants, and we've marched in the past several July 4th parades. We hope to lift the awareness of LGBTQ people in Medina by these actions. OutSupport is also happy to be involved in the Medina County High School's GSAs, the Gender and Sexuality Alliances, by hosting fundraising events and sharing the proceeds with the 4 active GSAs here in Medina County: Medina High School, Brunswick High School, Wadsworth High School, and Highland High School. We also attend activities that the GSAs offer to the public and as presenters to the groups, including the Ally Coffee held annually at the Medina High School, which invites adult members of the community to the school to get to know the teens and talk to them about their concerns. Per Jen Ayler, Medina High School GSA Teacher Advisor, the Medina High School GSA has been active since 2009, averaging between 100 and 200 teens each year who participate in at least one GSA activity, and that includes ally participation. That means in the course of 9 school years, Medina High School GSA has touched the lives of nearly 1,000 students, whether they be LGBTQ allies or their families. As you can see, these organizations and the people that are served by them, including my own children, are proof that it's important to recognize them and offer legal protections to them. And I encourage the council to consider a non-discrimination ordinance to this end. Thank you.
My name is Amy Demlow, and I live at 763 Victoria Circle. I'm a local attorney, business owner, and community supporter. I have 2 children, Aaron, a 20-year-old transgender son who attends the University of Akron, and Derek, a recent graduate of Medina High School who is headed to Ohio University. I want to encourage you to consider taking up this non-discrimination legislation as a continued effort to attract individuals to Medina. This is a nonpartisan issue. This legislation will propel Medina into an inclusive city to work, live, and play. So let's talk first about work. There are stories of individuals who have left Medina because they have not felt protected or have actually been warned that their LGBTQ status could jeopardize their job. Medina is currently struggling in its efforts to recruit employees to our businesses. Diversity is a hot button being discussed by local employers in various forums. If you participate in any activities that the Chamber or Medina County Economic Development Corporation organizes, it's hard to have a conversation without a discussion about finding local workers. The LGBTQ workforce may not consider Medina in their career opportunities due to the fact that those individuals do not have certain rights and protections that they do in neighboring communities. It's difficult to imagine that on a commute from Cleveland or Akron, where you live, where you enjoy those certain rights, that you actually lose them during your workday in Medina, only to regain them on your commute home. Next, let's talk about living in Medina. A large number of families who have LGBTQ members or friends live in Medina. How do you attract young people to an otherwise aging community? Often those returning or moving to Medina have lived in other locations with a more diverse population than what Medina currently has. One of the institutions that attracts those families is our school system. Medina City Schools is ahead on the issue of diversity, offering a GSA to welcome and support all LGBTQ students and allies. It is a step forward for our schools to promote an inclusive environment, but that sentiment of living inclusively also needs to be a part of a community where those same LGBTQ students and allies frequent businesses, whether it's the coffee shop, the ice cream parlor, or the pizza shop. Talking about recreation in Medina. Folks come to Medina for several reasons. The square allows us to congregate as a community, to enjoy band concerts, farmers markets, and other local events. We often attract visitors who enjoy the beauty of the square and patronize area businesses. We want to be viewed as a community welcoming to all. Non-discrimination legislation supports the LGBT community. Individuals have equal access to goods and services in Medina. At the end of the day, this is about legal protections for our LGBTQ friends and family, and sending a message to those looking at Medina as an option to work, to live, to play. I want my children to come back to Medina someday. Please tell them they are both welcome with the same rights and privileges. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Amy. I'm Joe Metazeski. I live at 6761 River Forest with my husband Nathan and our 2-year-old daughter Addison, whose attention span wouldn't let her be here tonight with us. So I'm an Ohio CPA and I'm a partner with Ernst & Young, so I guess I'm one of those people that likes accounting. We moved here last winter when we were looking for a home to raise our family. Thankfully, we've never suffered discrimination based on our sexual orientation in terms of being denied housing or a job. And I'm one of the fortunate Ohio residents that works for an employer like Ernst & Young that has fully inclusive non-discrimination protections, so I don't have to worry about that when I go to work. But it does pain me to know that at that time, my husband or I could be turned away or denied access to any of the stores or restaurants here in Medina simply because we are gay. Now, this week, we celebrate the 3rd anniversary of the U.S. Supreme Court's infamous opinion on marriage equality that paved the way for same-sex marriage. And that was such an important step forward for the LGBTQ community. But contrary to popular belief, very much the aha moment when I talked to so many people about this, that didn't provide the non-discrimination protections that we're talking about. That's right. In Ohio, it's okay for us to get married, but we can still be fired from our job, denied access to an apartment, or not served at a restaurant simply because of our sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression. So you've heard from Sandy about the constituency that we believe supports this in Medina, and from Amy about the impact of this non-discrimination protection to the business and economic development here in Medina. And it's not just about future economic growth, it's about preserving what we've already achieved over the years. Rather than just taking our word for it, however, I want to introduce the committee briefly to Ohio Business Convenes. Yeah. OBC is a nonpartisan coalition of businesses that have put their names and their logos publicly on a list saying, we believe it's right for business to have fully inclusive non-discrimination protections across the state of Ohio. In just the 2 short years that OBC has been in formation, over 400 companies have signed on, including some of our largest Ohio employers, Eaton Corporation, General Electric, Sherwin-Williams, proudly Ernst & Young, no problem. More notably, the Cleveland Clinic, Westfield Insurance, and Huntington, all of whom have strong presence here in Medina. And our small businesses, such as Cool Beans Cafe, Retzel, Legacy Foods of Medina, and the United Way of Medina County. This impressive list of businesses that share these values and stand with us on this topic is ever growing, hoping for the sake of economic prosperity that we adopt these protections in every city across the state. There's more information in the packets that we'll be providing to the committee at the end of the meeting today regarding OBC, and any of us would be happy to answer questions. And just lastly, on a personal note, I've participated in these discussions for several cities throughout Ohio, and I'm so proud to finally be doing it for the city that I live in. So thank you very much. Pam?
So just in closing, we do have a packet for each of you council members, for the mayor, for the council clerk, the law director, and whoever the new council person will be. And it contains sample legislation from some other cities, frequently asked questions, and other general information that you might find helpful. So we hope that you will assign this to committee and begin the process to make non-discrimination happen in Medina. And And I'd also like to say that, acknowledge Gwen Stembridge, who's here, with her camera up in the air there. She is the Northeast Ohio Coordinator for Equality Ohio, and she can be of assistance as well as you go through this process. So we thank you very much for allowing us to introduce this evening.
Well, thanks. If you could give that to us, give a copy to the clerk. I'll probably assign it, Bill, special legislation, so you can look it over.
Got nothing in there? Well, no, wait a minute, I do.
Oh, you're gonna have
That's
something
fine,
else.
I'm happy to have it.
Okay. So you can discuss it. I mean, I don't know if anybody has questions, but have you contacted, have you been discussing, I know you mentioned several businesses. Did you talk to the chamber about it yet? I mean, where's all that stand?
Jacqueline's here tonight.
Oh,
Hello.
great. Jack, there she is.
Yes, we are here. We are excited to partner with them and begin the conversations.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I guess the question is discrimination in any form is not acceptable or should not be acceptable. I mean, I think we all grown as a country to understand that you shouldn't discriminate somebody, whether it be color, creed, religion, or anything. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense any longer. But I think that we should look at it and see how it could impact the city and what benefits can be derived from it. But we appreciate you coming and speaking about it. And does anybody else have any questions?
I just want to say well done to everybody. It's long overdue.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was great presentation, thank you. And I think it's important to understand that most of everybody in the community who's been here, worked here, been involved in civic affairs or local government, understands that this city government has a good heart and shares those concerns and works hard so that everybody has equal opportunity. But it is important when you go out into the wider world, outside the doors, to ensure that it doesn't have its limits anywhere. And so I appreciate you coming and giving this presentation. It's very thoughtful. Thank you. I'll look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All right, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. You don't have to leave either. You can listen to the rest of this stuff. Memo 18-125, memo of understanding for the City Medina Railway. Patrick?
Thank you. As everybody knows, I think the City of Medina has a railroad. Back in 2006, we entered into an agreement between the city and the 3 rail users to form a rail commission. That agreement has worked very well for us for the past 12 years or so. 2 years ago, we did lose one of our partners, Valspar closed their facility here in Medina. We're fortunate enough to have a new partner taking over the Valspar property, that's Spray Products, and they have a desire to use the railway, which means we have to form a new memorandum of understanding. We took it's basically the old one, we did clean some things up and of course substituted Spray Products for Valspar. But other than that, it's pretty much the same as we've been operating under. I did receive feedback from all 3 partners, including Spray Products today, and they're all comfortable with this going forward, so I'd like to pass it.
Questions?
Yeah, I do have one question. Why is there such a disparity in the rate per car?
Originally, that came to us when we first started this in '06. The 3 different entities, that's it, Osborne, Kekosing, and Valspar got together and came up with that on their own. And the reason being, Valspar is kind of way out of whack. It's based on the number of rail cars that they get. Osborne, for instance, gets about 3,500 or so cars a year. Spray Products tells us that in their first full year, they expect to get about 40. So their rate is significantly higher. In addition, Osborne and Kekosing are served by about the top 1/3 of our track. To get all the way down to Spray Products it's about 2/3 of our length. So it's a lot longer track to maintain for a lot less cars. They all felt it was equitable to charge them some more, and Valspar was accepting it, and Spray Products indicated today that they're fine with it too.
I think the good point was a few years ago, or maybe 10 years ago now, we received a $900,000 grant.
Correct.
What was that building? I can't remember the name of the grant.
That was the ARA grant, the stimulus grant we had
Right.
back then, and we did 4 rail crossings. We did significant improvements to the rail just in terms of the infrastructure. We also did get another grant to put the gate in at State Road there by Kekosing. That was kind of a pass-through, that we were ordered to do that, but the state paid for it. We've got a couple of different grants.
So I think, I mean, we are a member of the consortium, also the city, and we contribute money on the ongoing operations of the railroad every year, but some of that money's been suspended and lowered and suspended, depending on the reserve account that we have in there, if any kind of need comes arise. I think that was modified just to clarify the reserve amount, but I think everybody's happy with that.
Yep. We rate, for those that aren't on the commission, John serves, I serve, Pat serves, and then the members of the industry, Kimberly. It used to be 65,000 was the reserve, at 65,000 today versus when we first put this together. So we raised that in number one to 200,000. For 5 years, we went from 17,005 a year, plus, that was the user fee, plus the rail charge. We cut that back to 10,000 for 5 years, and then we were to readdress it. That 5 years was up in 2017. Our reserve is beyond this 200,000, and our expected maintenance is, will not bring us down below the 200 unless something significant happens that we can't foresee. So as a result of that, we negotiated to waive the fee totally, that 10,000 fee for the first 2 years, and then get back together at the end of 2019. And I can tell you that way of handling business with our industry is what got the Carlisle Break and Friction here, because I used that point precisely when they were talking to the other 2 states, and asked them to ask those other cities if they ever had more money than they needed and cut their fees as a result of it. And they went away for 60 days, 90 days, and came back and said, you're right, nobody's ever reduced fees like that. So I think it's examples like that that we do here of keeping the money in their pockets to run the businesses, to let them hire people, improve their facilities when we don't necessarily need it, that treats them fairly and honestly, and is an example, I think, of how we do business here.
Questions?
I think too, Pat, the emergency clause was because they want to start as soon as
Right, I
July.
was going to add that.
Yes,
We- Discussing with them for a couple of months, they'd indicate they were not going to get rail till the fall. A couple of weeks ago, they told us they wanted to start receiving it in mid-July. So kind of advanced our schedule here, and that's why we'd like to get the emergency clause.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including the emergency clause.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 18126, 2018 pavement marking program. Patrick.
This came to me from our street department. Every year they do a pavement marking in-house, long line painting, which is the center line, stop bars, crosswalks, anything like that. They've been looking around, and they'd like to try a year where we farm it out, hire a contractor to do it. Bill Davis feels it would be done more efficiently, and actually at a comparative cost to his department, which is kind of overtaxed with other responsibilities. So they're funding it, and we'll do a project like this, but basically it's for pavement marking throughout the city.
So we're doing the 50,000.
Correct.
Questions?
Done. I think it's a good thing we did.
Mr. President, this is going to be just, as we hire them to do certain streets, we're not going to be in any extended contract with whoever is the successful bidder for this.
No, this is it's a project, so we'll hire to do 10 miles of center line, 50 different stop bars, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But once they're done, it's done.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 18127, 2018 concrete pavement general services program. Patrick.
Thank you. This is a project we do annually. We've been doing it up until last year, was combined asphalt and concrete. Last year, we asked, and council agreed to split it out as just a concrete program. We use this for our sidewalk program, the sidewalk repair program, and also miscellaneous repairs throughout the year. One of the needs, we have water breaks year-round. Generally, we, in the past, had repaired those when we did our concrete street program, which is in the summer. So if you had a water break in September, it may not get fixed till next summer. With this, they're kind of on call, and we can use them to do it whenever as necessary.
Questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 18128, new chapters 909 and 911, the codified ordinances regarding small cell wireless facilities and structures and small cell design guidelines. This is kind of discussion. We got the packet. I read it, but it's kind of a big packet. Mr. Huber, you read it, and Mr. Patton, I think you were involved in it. Who wants to give the summary?
I want Greg to give it.
What about Jonathan? He's got some skin in his
Jonathan.
game.
Oh, Jonathan's in there too, yeah. You guys can divide it up if you like.
Yep, I agree with Pat.
The state of Ohio passed legislation that becomes effective July 31st. It's legislation that is designed to give small cell providers access to the city right-of-way and city poles and structures so that they can install more small cell antennas. I think if you recall, this legislation was presented last year by the state of Ohio. In my opinion, it was quite heavy-handed, and in fact, this legislation was found by a judge in Franklin County to be unconstitutional. The state of Ohio went back to the drawing board and included more input from the municipalities and lawyers representing the municipalities to try to craft legislation that's a little more sensitive. And so what is being enacted July 31st is the result of the effort. We were represented by Walter Haverfield and Todd Font down in Columbus with respect to input concerning some of our issues. Specifically, we have a significant historic district. We have residential areas where there's everything is underground so that it's not visually instructive, and what the state of Ohio proposes to do would allow these antennas to be put in pretty much where the facility provider wants to put them. So in order for the city to have guidelines in place that give us some input effective July 31st, we would need to pass the legislation or something close to the legislation that is being presented. Does council have a copy of the legislation that, an example of what we're talking about?
I got it.
I got it.
Okay.
I guess, I mean, for your point, just so everybody understands, what he's talking about is, in front of your house, they could put a cell pole right in front of your house, right in the right of way, as long as it's a public right of way, and have a miniature cell tower in front of your house. We have no control over that.
And you don't get paid for it.
And you don't get paid for it, it could go anywhere, and it still can go in front of your house right now, but if we don't adopt this, they could do whatever and make it look like whatever they want to make it look like. So this is kind of what we're talking about. It's still going to happen if they want to do it, but maybe we can make it look a little better. We have no control of
There
if
are
they put it.
still some things about this legislation that I find irritating. I can't figure out how the state of Ohio can tell the city of Medina how much rent we are to charge for allowing them to put a cell antenna on our pole, because we own it. But this legislation does that. And there's some other things that strike me as heavy-handed, but nonetheless, this is the best that we could negotiate with all of the powers that be. And it is effective July 31st. And so in order for us to have some control and some direction, we will need to pass something close to the legislation that you have now in front of you. I expect there will be a few changes from having talked with the attorneys at Walter and Haverfield this afternoon, which I will, of course, get to you as soon as I get those changes. I think because council goes on vacation, it might be that you would want to have a special meeting.
We're not going on vacation.
Are we going together?
We're just taking a break.
It's vacation.
I'm not going.
We're taking a break with how many?
But at any
special
rate,
meetings?
it needs to be passed by July 31st, and this is the first presentation to you.
So the question is, we're looking at it now, you got 2 weeks to look at it, pass it the 9th, or we can have a special meeting before the 31st to pass it with an emergency clause. So it's up to council what they want to do. There's a question I have for you, or maybe you can ask the Walter Haverfield. Does it require co-location in here if there is one existing already, a tower? Or do we require them to locate on that tower if they want to come in, so they don't put a new one up?
I think what we try to do is encourage that, but I'm not sure that we have mandatory say on that final issue.
Right. I mean, I don't
Sometimes
think
they
you
have
can.
to have spatial distances
Right.
between, one and the next one.
But I just wondered if it doesn't interfere with their transmission, or can we say, you have to locate on this tower now, because we don't want another tower next to it? I don't think there was a 100-foot radius, a 100-foot thing, or there's all these different
It's a
things.
discussion point because the facility provider has input with respect to whether or not what we are asking them to do works. And so there's some conversation that has to occur on co-location.
And what about the square district, the historic district? I know there's a 40-foot tower height requirement, or, I mean, there's language in here. I mean, can we, since we're in a historic district, do we have any more ability to say you can't be in a historic district?
I don't know for sure.
I mean, that would be one thing I would push for, to say, no, you're not putting any towers in a historic district. You can go outside of it and put a tower if you like, but going out those couple blocks shouldn't affect their transmission, I don't know. But that matter, cell tower.
And we do have certain grounds that we can deny their application for here. And I don't see historic district in that.
Yeah, I don't want to see them on the light poles in historic districts, some antennas on top of those. I would look to.
I'm not sure if the facility provider has a compelling reason that we can mandatorily say no. I'm a little unsure on that question.
Well, let's just pressure our attorneys to see how good they are. They can pressure the state.
I take it back, I take that back, John. No, there is something conflict with the historic nature or character.
I know, but they have to make it look like that. I don't know how you make a cell tower look like that.
Well, just,
I never saw a historic cell tower.
get Paul
Did they have
Revere
those
out.
back in 1800s?
I don't think so, John.
That's what I don't know.
Bill would know.
So did you all not?
Thank you.
I think,
Have you seen one
Did they not
yet?
get a copy?
Have you seen one of these?
I don't think everybody got a copy. Was it on the, did you put it on
You
the?
sent it to me, but I thought we were getting another, that was a draft.
Yeah, no.
Oh, no.
That's a no. No.
No.
There's
So
one right on Smith Road, right next to Little Nichols' office.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's not intrusive.
The question is if they put up 5 more of those, does that, the number, quantity make it?
I don't know what the technology,
Yeah, I
I don't
don't-
know how far their radius
I don't
that
either.
they work with. Plus you've got the one on, a tower on the back of Miss Molly's.
But I guess the
So
question
there is
is,
stuff already there.
you're correct, but I guess the question that I think I disagree with is that the state's saying that we have no control over it, pretty much. The cell tower companies can come in and put them in next to your house on your residential street, in Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3, maybe not in the downtown area, so when you walk out your house, you can have one there. I don't think that, I just think that that's wrong for the state to allow cell tower companies to come in without any say, or limited say, of what we can do about it. It just seems
It kind of flies in the face of home
disappointing.
rule.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
For sure.
Agreed. That's why I went
John?
on my rant that time.
John?
Right, I remember.
Yes.
Yeah, so the requirements for, in this draft ordinance that is labeled Chapter 911, 911.11G, Walter Haverfield has provided us kind of, a model ordinance that kind of says, hey, these are pieces that are part of the state legislation that you kind of have to be not against, not violating that state legislation. And the item about overall heights is one of those sections that's kind of required, and it pretty much is like, you have to allow it throughout the city, regardless of the historic district, which isn't a zoning district, it's an overlay. The zoning district of the historic district is C2, so it's either 40 or 35 feet.
Mhm.
So, and it pretty much has to be consistent with the typical zoning building height regulation of that individual zoning district, which is pretty much 35 or 40 between our various intensity zoning districts.
Mr. Huber, when did you say we're gonna get another updated version of this? Did any modifications that were done?
Probably this week.
Well, we can review it over 4th of July watching fireworks, so.
And we can probably
Talk
wrap
about it on
up
the
at the
9th.
next council.
Yeah, if you get all your comments in, if there's any other comments, yes, we could vote on it with the emergency clause at that meeting, through finance, through council, unless you want to come back again. I mean, I just want to make sure everybody looks at it.
We have to get it.
We just have to get it.
We
As soon as we
don't
get
have
the new
it.
draft, because not
I'm
all of us
looking at
have
it
it.
before you get it. So if we can get that latest version, we'll try to get your comments or talk to you, either you, Greg, Jonathan, or Pat.
I've got one more question. As I read through this, I saw the things about where the antennas can go, light poles, what have you. But I also I saw they referenced control boxes. But I don't see anything in there about regulating those, other than there has to be a control box someplace near there. Did you see anything there, Jonathan, that
Are you
can?
talking ground equipment?
Yeah,
that
the ground
supports the
equipment.
antenna?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's varying ways of like mounting it on the pole. They have a ground box that sits on the ground, or in some places we can require that they put it in a pit underground. So really, when we were discussing it internally, there was a lot of discussion on, where that's appropriate. So we have certain areas of the city that are newer neighborhoods that have a lot of underground utilities. So do we want a control box? We want a box on the, controls on the pole, on the ground, or in a pit? It's really gonna be dependent on the particular character of a given neighborhood or given location.
But we do have a say in
Yes,
where they
there's a lot of
put that.
flexibility to say, this is your first position that we want you to go to, show us otherwise, maybe you can go to number 2.
And I guess there is an insurance section in here, I don't know how that relates to, they always hit the utility poles, they're gonna be hitting these poles too, and how, if, we're held harmless from that, or, it's in our right of way, of course, so we don't wanna have to be brought into a lawsuit because there was something in our right of way that caused the injury or death of somebody running into it. So I don't know.
The fact that you bring up right-of-way is relevant. We're gonna have a third piece of legislation that somewhat ties in with this, that's a right-of-way piece that gives to the city more oversight of what gets put in our right-of-way, because as it stands, the state of Ohio seems to feel that our right-of-way is a place to put more and more utility, and our right-of-ways are getting filled up. And typically hasn't been as much a problem as it presents at this point in time, and so we are looking at instituting some legislation that will give the council and the administrative side of the government more input in what exactly is going into the right-of-way. The utility companies are not big fans of that legislation, and so when that is introduced, we have to notify the PUCO 45 days ahead of time, and I expect the council will be contacted by the utility companies because they do not want to have to report to anybody about what's being put in right away. So that's next.
Great. And that's this fall, I think, correct, when we come back? All right, so we have more fun stuff to review and think about. So if you can get that, when you get it to all the council, we'll give it to Kathy and to distribute them to all of us, and we'll go over it. Okay. 18, any other questions on that? 18-129, review and discussion of city sidewalk program from 16 to 18.
Thank you. Just want to get a quick update. We are getting ready to start our third sidewalk program. We started in 2016. That map I handed out just kind of shows you what we did the past 2 years and what we're planning on going forward. Going forward, it could change based on need or whatnot, but it's kind of roughly what we're thinking. First 2 years, I think, went pretty well. We did learn a lot, but as council knows, that it's the property owner's responsibility to pay for the sidewalks, and by and large, we've got a lot of cooperation from the folks. Seems to be a lot of support for the program itself, and even when we do send invoices, there's not a lot of pushback, some certainly, but all in all, I think Keith can probably attest to this, we've gotten very good response in terms of payment. There's, to my knowledge, very few outstanding invoices out there, so we'll do it again this year. We'll be through that concrete pavement general services program that we just talked to in the last item or 2 items ago. We anticipate about $60,000 to $70,000 worth of work, which is equivalent to what we've done the last couple of years.
And this is mainly in Ward 1 this year.
Correct. We're always open to suggestions, but this was our idea. Initially was to start in the center part of the city, and we did that, and now kind of radiate out until we get the entire city covered.
Yeah, I think it was a good plan. I think what the mayor suggested, when we developed it, to start at the center where the sidewalks were downtown, that area, the center, really critical use for walkability, and then you can't do the whole city at one time, but to do it in a progressive way, then move out, do another section. And the great thing is, once you get down a few years down the road, the sidewalks that were the most in need of this, that whole inner kind of village area, those sidewalks will be done. And the program can, I suppose, will be slowed down for quite some time until you have another, until you need to start to work in another area that is critical. But I think the program's been extremely successful and important to us to have a walkable neighborhood. And I think for home sales, it's been, for when you look at the housing turnovers in the village area, the older area of the town, where people are younger in their 20s and 30s that are buying homes or having a child, they want to be able to walk, push a stroller. Those things are important. And for the areas where the turnover hasn't happened, where you may have a walker, or frequently I see people in wheelchairs. And when you have really disruptive sidewalks, it's almost impossible to get by. So I think on many levels, I think that this program has helped to serve the community. And we worked, in committee, I think, to try to make it more comfortable for people. If you had a corner, I remember Denny talked about there's a corner lot, you have like a lot of sidewalk, could be expensive, and you can put it on your tax duplicate. The city does give you the opportunity to use a city contractor, which keeps your costs down. And for most people, it's usually just one set. I think they're 4 feet, a 4-foot section, which is really pretty doable. And like I said, I think it's been a benefit to the city, citywide, for all of those reasons. I think it's been helpful to us. And and the administration has done an outstanding job of putting all this together, which wasn't as easy to do as it sounded, I think, when we passed the legislation, because it's easy to pass the legislation, but then somebody has to actually figure out how to make it function, which you did, and the administration did. So that's my take on it anyway.
The finance department too, give them.
Yeah, absolutely. If you ever need a raise for a clerk or anything, come on back. We'll turn you down.
I have just one question, because I wasn't in on the conversations with these. With the older streets that we have with the sidewalk that is right up against the actual road, do we have any plans to move those in, or are we going to keep those the same width right along the side of the
We
streets?
have not. We've talked about that. The problem is in some of our older streets, we only have 33 foot of right of way, which is 25 foot for the street and then 4 foot each side for the sidewalk. So to move those out, we would have to purchase right of way from all the property owners, which can get expensive. So the only part I remember doing was in front of the school on Union, but that's because the school allowed us to do that.
Well, you'd have more room for cell phone towers then.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, thank you.
Any other
Thank
questions?
you. You just gave me a good idea. Let's move all the sidewalks to the street.
That'd be popular.
Then we lose the utility problem.
Better cell service.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. 18130 fiscal year CHIP grant change order 3439 Grafton Road.
Yes, thank you. This is to increase the purchase order for this house in Brunswick under our current CHIP program. The original purchase order was for $40,000, which was about $1,000 over the contract amount. There were change orders that had to come in through, and the new total amount for the contract is $42,300, which is an increase over the original purchase order of $2,300. So recommend that this be approved with the emergency clause, mainly due so that with the CHIP, the contractors, there's very limited number of contractors that bid on these. In order to provide cash flow to them, we like to have them paid as soon as possible. That's why the emergency clause is usually on these, so that they can have the money to be able to continue bidding on them to continue this program. Thank you.
Questions?
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 18-131, discussion of Memorial Park special events policy. York?
He doesn't want to hear what I have to say.
I do want to hear.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had asked for this to have a discussion about the Memorial Park and Pool. There's an event that's coming up in 11 short days. The event has been planned for quite some time with the idea that we were going to have the pool open to residents on a daily, for the entire day, along with food and entertainment all day long. Either miscommunication or lack of communication, I'm not exactly sure what had happened, but I've been working with the Friends of Medina Memorial, it's a mouthful, Memorial Park and Pool on this event, and we find ourselves kind of stuck with not much space to go before our event. What we need to discuss, or I'd like to discuss, is if there is any leeway for the city to relax current ID or registration requirements for this one-time bicentennial event. It is only a one-time event because it is to highlight what's going on for the bicentennial. We won't have one of those again. Or if we are held firm by the current ordinances that we have.
In what respect are you referring to? Like, when you say ID, you want to let any township,
Well,
anybody come in, or what?
The original plan was to lease the pool for the day, rent the pool out for the entire day, and allow access to anybody who is attending the event to use the pool as a way to bring people back into Memorial Pool and get them acclimated to it. Because a lot of people, once you stop using an amenity, it takes you, you do something else and you don't go back. And this was a way to try to reintroduce the public to the pool, as well as people who are coming back into town for those bicentennial events to enjoy the pool like they did when they were children, while they're back in town for everything else.
So what specific issue, when you say what area of the ordinance you want it relaxed?
Right now, our hope was to allow the kids, and mostly kids, to attend the pool, but without parents who are willing to come in, sign them in, and provide ID for their children and sign in for the day.
And we do that now, is it, the rec center, is it 11, 12, they're allowed to come in? 11 and up?
11 and up.
So when you say relax it, like you have a 6-year-old come without a parent, come on in, and, I mean, do we want to babysit them, I guess is the question? I mean, who's going to watch them?
I don't want to watch them personally, but if I could, is it possible if I open this up to?
Oh, sure, I'm just wondering, I mean, if you have somebody 11 and under, do we really want them to come without a parent?
Can I have Deb Halleck speak to that?
Okay.
Deb?
I'm Deborah Halleck, and thank you for taking the time to consider what we think is an important criteria in order to make this an accessible event for Medina, for friends coming back to Medina to celebrate in the bicentennial, as well as the families who wish to participate. What we originally intended in my initial conversations with Mike was to rent the pool during the day, because we felt it needed to be a daytime event. We also wish to have it free, so that we're trying to reduce barriers for folks who would like to attend and haven't been able to attend, but also even a small amount, and $4 even, might be preventing families from attending, especially in a party atmosphere. But also, as we put this together, we wanted to also look at the ID policy, the waivers, the picture ID, appearance, because all of those things for an event make it very cumbersome in order to process. So what you're talking about is trying to handle hundreds, potentially thousands of children and families, processing them, and we would hope quickly, especially if it's 95 degrees, into the pool, and in doing so, provide, in the pool, the adequate supervision for their pool participation. So, again, in answer to your question, I think what we're looking for is some way to operate that day in a way that we can allow the widest participation possible, both in the pool and the park activities.
Well, the first thing that jumps to my mind is liability for the city and insurance, what's covered on. If we change our policy for that day, do we open ourselves up? If somebody gets hurt, there's so many people in there, somebody, God forbid, drowns, what liability do we have? Is they're gonna say, well, you guys change your policy, you gotta cover it all on your own. I mean, Mr. Huber, I mean, I don't know if that,
We actually already have the insurance.
for anybody and
The
everybody,
Bicentennial took out an insurance policy, named the city as an additional insured, but there's a limit as to the number of people that can be there. It can't be everybody that wants to come in, from the health department regulations and the space and everything else. The second thing is legally, we can't have rules for every day except that day. If we, under the equal application of the law, if the rules are in place, the rules are in place for a purpose, and it can't be for everybody else except this day and these people. It doesn't work that way, because then we're gonna get challenged as, why do you have the rules? Yeah, I didn't have to have it the day I went in when it was free. Why you ask me for an ID now? It doesn't work that way.
well, that was the other question.
Sorry.
I guess you.
That was the
brought
answer
it-
to the question.
I guess you brought it out. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. President. And just to touch on and add on to what we're talking about, you know, why would we waive any policies that are gonna put the patrons' security and safety at risk? Just in the past 2 weeks, 2 weekends ago exactly, on the 10th, 13th, 16th, and 17th, we denied 2 sexual predators access to the rec center and 2 notice of trespasses into the outdoor pool through the police department, because those people, the 2 notice of trespasses were a list of crimes and things that they have done and have actually, you know, received notice of trespass from the police department. So you're talking about not only just waiving those policies and allowing that, and then not having them sign waivers. Even waivers, when you walk in the door of the rec center, we have policies in place for the city that cover, you know, the rec center, but do we really want to waive a waiver that, you know, helps ensure if somebody gets injured or something happens in there? I don't think so. I mean, we're talking about memberships, programs, everything they come in for, they sign a waiver. Even physical therapy shows us an ID as they come into the building and sign a waiver. It's just-
Well, I guess the question is, why, I guess, why do we have a fear that it's not gonna be successful if we have the rules that we always have in place?
Right.
I guess that's my question.
Comment then on too, last year we had Armstrong sponsor $400 towards 100 people, come first 100 people through the door. We had no issues with them signing up, signing the waiver, showing IDs.
Well, what's the, I guess I wanna know what was discussed in the committee, why we view that that's gonna be an issue.
Right.
I think you need to ask the committee.
Let me respond to that.
Okay.
First of all, I think part of the problem here is that this is not a discussion that just has occurred in the last day. I mean, we began this planning in cooperation with Jansen and Mike and the city and other folks last August, working what we thought each of these issues through in order to get to a final event, which we thought a month ago had been finalized except for some hand painting on the site in the park. So what was a surprise to us was to learn just a week or 2 ago that in fact these things that we thought had been worked through to a general understanding so that the event was able to go forward. In fact, now we're going to stop the event as planned with really 3 weeks' notice for the event as advertised. So that's one concern. The second concern is, I think when you're looking at folks coming to the pool and participating in the event, which is, our goal is to bring people there, not to bring people there and turn them away. And if they don't have ID with them, most kids and families don't go to the pool normally with IDs and that they aren't used to a recreation. If they don't have an adult with them that will sign in and will stay in the pool with them, if they don't have the ability or the capacity to go through the waiver process, you've reached a lot of barriers to just processing kids and families and getting them into the pool site. So one of our goals was to, as best we could, and again, there's all kinds of rules regarding how many kids are allowed in the pool and the lifeguards and all of those things are in place. What we're just trying to do is, for one day, for the bicentennial event, we had hoped, as part of our activity, we could put together a larger opportunity for kids and families to participate and experience the pool.
No, I understand, I think it's, I understand your goal, and there's nothing wrong with your goal. I guess the question is, there's some legal issues associated with it, what I'm hearing. And also, I think we developed these rules over years because of the issues that we've run into over the years. And the only thing I would disagree with is I don't think it's going to inhibit your event as the way you think it will inhibit your event. I think you're still going to have a successful, and that's just my opinion, because people who are coming that don't want to follow these rules, there's a reason. It's not that they just don't have it or don't want to do it. There's other reasons in my mind that they're doing it, because there's a lot of participation now. And I don't think your event's going to be not successful because of the rules. I think you're still going to have probably too many people showing up, and the fear I have is that your event's going to be that not enough people can get in the water at one time, and they're going to say, well, we can't have everybody in the pool, we got to get out, and that's really what's going to be the problem.
Well,
Yes, ma'am.
I think you have, I think in general, the pool has a lot less participation than you really think. We've talked with a lot of people. I'm sorry, my name is Deborah Capps. I'm on the board of the Friends of Medina Memorial Park and Pool. We've been trying to talk with people and finding out that a lot of people don't know where the Memorial Park and Pool is. They haven't been to the pool. We've been trying to get a sense. We've gone over several times. We go pretty regularly, actually, over to the park and pool to see how the park and pool is being used. And frankly, we haven't seen much activity over there. There might be a good time over at the pool where we might see what some people might think is a lot of people. But, I honestly, I have to tell you, I've been to community pools in other communities I've lived in. It's really not that many people. We've been there when kids have been turned away and haven't been able to get in and are sent back crying. That's just not a good experience. We've seen where families have taken, it's taken 5 to 10 minutes to get them in. That can't happen in an event. We're trying to make it a good experience. And, I understand the concept of risks and liability. I greatly appreciate that issue. But when you base the whole pool on that concept with no balance of, community service, or, there are other issues to keep in mind, I really would hope there's some room for that. When you're looking to, put pads up to make sure that, it's just not possible to take away all the risk.
No, understood. I think, I get what you're saying. I think everybody else can appreciate, I guess, what is everybody else's opinion up here regarding relaxing the rules on the day of the bicentennial?
Well, I think one thing that we have bumped up against here is it's a public, Mike, tell me if I'm wrong, it's an open, Friday's a public open day. I mean, it's the day we use, the pool's open to the public.
Right.
And I don't think, and I understand, and I've spoken with the pool, Friends of the Pool, and I understand where you're coming from. I mean, I think that there has always been a concern. I think one of the reasons that we wanted to locate I think some of us that voted for it wanted to locate the pool where it was located was to make sure it was accessible, because everybody doesn't have an opportunity to belong to a club where you have a pool, but we wanted it accessible to folks in the community in particular who do not have access to those kinds of facilities. And so I think that concern, part of it I think is born of that concern that if you are the parent of folks working, maybe you have child working parents who are paid by the hour, and if you don't show up for work, you don't get paid. Well, without the parent or without that adult, you do not have access to the pool. The flip side of that is it's a public school, it's a public pool day, open to the public, and those rules, the rules that we have in place, and I don't want to leave the impression with anybody in particular, like the Gazette or the Post or whoever else is here, that the city hasn't, the city administration, I know, has been engaged and worked to try to make this, make this work and be a successful event. The mayor in particular, I've known the mayor longer, I think, than anybody, I'm sure anybody in this room. And I know that his intention always is to make things work, and to make them work well within what's possible. And so I don't know where the latitude, what latitude we have, or what if we have latitude within what we are ultimately, as the mayor indicated, our larger responsibilities. I don't know if there is any more latitude there. And if not, then I would certainly hope that you're right, that it really isn't going to be an impediment. But I do understand the idea of it being an impediment because of that disconnect between how we view this, like, okay, I could take the day off. I actually don't have to because I'm not working. But some people can't do that. Some people can't just gin up an 18-year-old. But then again, we have rules that were seriously debated. And I know Mike and Jensen did a lot of hard work in the time that we had when we were looking at the construction and development of the pool as to what would be the best way to run it and what sort of rules we needed in place. So I don't know if there is any latitude left, to move this.
Laura?
I've said my piece.
Hi.
Yes.
As one of the only two people that's still living that built that pool in 1955, I just want to say very simply that this was a problem where Bill and I and Denny and the pool people in August knew exactly what we wanted to do that day for the bicentennial. Now, I understand if you bend one way, you got to bend to everybody. That's a good old excuse. The point is, this is a bicentennial. This is 200 years. This is one of the most important things that ever happened to Medina. And 63 years ago, there were 22 of us that went down every Saturday and Sunday with our picks and shovels and built that pool. And I raised personally $5,000 from Elbridge Moxley that he later forgave. Now, I want to tell you how important this is to me. One of the most important events of the entire bicentennial. Bear none. I've been to every single bicentennial activity since it started. And you know what? This is the best one because we're doing it for the kids. And you know what? I've advertised, I've talked to Bob many times, and he's put everything in the paper about what we wanted to do. We wanted to make it free. We wanted to do everything for the kids. We got JCs coming back from Virginia, making the trip specifically. But you know what? We advertised exactly what we want to do, and 2 weeks before this thing happened, whoever woke up in the legal department, or Mike, or whoever, all of a sudden said, we can't do it. Why in the hell didn't you tell us this 6 months ago? Now, I can dig articles out of the Gazette and the Post that says that this whole thing is free. It's all of the kids. No registration, no nothing. Now we're going to say, you have to comply with the city. I understand ordinances, but you know what? We have falsely advertised, and it's your fault, not ours. Because Denny knew about it, and Bill knew about it, and the people around here knew about it, Mike knew about it. Now, why didn't you bring the thing up 6 months ago, and we could have complied and said, okay, we got to do your registration and everything else, okay? But you can't do it at 11:30 for a 12 o'clock event. Now, you think about that. You think about all of the criticism for what we're doing down on the border with kids. What are you going to think about when everybody finds out that you've rejected this thing? What about the hundreds of kids that thought they were going to get in for free? You think about that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hyde. And I appreciate everything that you said. I am one of the ones that have been aware of it, and I can tell you the date, it wasn't August, it was June 2nd, when we had the
first one.
the pool opening, you were there, and Deborah's father was there, Mr. Rieger. There was quite a few of you that put your heart and soul into making the initial municipal pool be a reality back in the late 50s. And I support the Friends of the Memorial Pool, or Memorial Park and Pool 110%. For me, there was some misunderstanding, because on June 2nd of 2017, Deborah approached me, and I know she talked to Bill and the mayor, and said, I've got this wonderful idea, Denny, and I hope you can support it. And when I heard what she said, I said, yeah, count me in, Deborah. I mean, I think we are so proud of last year, and still today, proud of opening the memorial pool, because it almost didn't happen. I can tell you, after several years, it almost didn't happen, but it did. So that's past history. On that day, Deborah, and I think it was just a misunderstanding on my part. She says, Denny, this is the event that we want to have. We want to have, and I can't remember for sure if she gave me the actual date, but on this day, I want to get a bunch of business sponsors around the community to donate money so we can have a free event with bands, games for kids. Deborah, that makes 110% a great idea. When I heard initially sponsors, and I attended a few of the Memorial Pool meetings, when I look at a sponsor, if I look at it as, okay, this is what it's going to cost to put on this event, and we're going to raise money for the sponsor, raise money for the sponsors to pay for that. I looked at that as also including the cost of admission. Now, maybe that was just a misunderstanding on my part. I think that part of the equation has been settled. There was a donation from the Bicentennial Committee that's covering probably, if not most of, if not all, the cost of the free admission for people. So I don't think that's going to be misleading of people reading that it's going to be a free event, because I do believe that it is still going to be a free event.
Well, we originally wanted to charge 25 cents, because that was the original price in 1955.
Well, I think when I was a kid,
And I think that
my
would be-
summer pass was like $8 or something.
I
so-
think that would be more important to charge 25 cents just for the idea, of the historical idea, than letting them in free.
Right. And the only reason I'm saying this is because if I wouldn't have been misunderstanding, and Deborah said or did nothing wrong, I misunderstood, because if I would have understood that she wanted the city to donate the cost of every admission, I would have said, well, you're gonna have to talk to.
No.
You're misunderstanding again.
Well, that's not the first time that's happened.
No, let me clarify this. What actually happened was, and all of us members are a little fuzzy here, but what actually happened was in August, the pool opened in June, and we were all excited, but we weren't that excited. We were just trying to get the pool open, and we were talking about ways that we could use the pool and expand the community. In August, I called Mike and specifically asked him if it would be possible to rent the pool during the day, make it accessible for, and at what cost. And if the city was interested, if friends were interested in participating, but I also indicated that I'd be talking to the Bicentennial Committee if it was appropriate. Mike called me back and said, yes, it'd be possible to do those things, and he gave me a cost that he doesn't, at this point, remember, but what we discussed with me was $2,000. That seemed to me to be somewhat in the ballpark. I called several people to get that checked out. They thought so. I called him back, confirmed it, then talked to Bill Lamb the next week and asked him if he felt that it would be appropriate to pass on to the Bicentennial. He did. I went to the Bicentennial. meeting the next week, got it approved by the bicentennial. And so at this point, it was now, this was their August meeting, late August. So at this point, it was now an official bicentennial activity. At no point had we talked about not paying for something. I was trying to get something on the schedule, on people's radar, to see if there was interest and at what cost, and then try to build around it.
Right, and if I would have, not to interrupt you, but if I would have finished, I ended up realizing that. Like I said, I had no, from our initial meeting, I had no thoughts that the city was going to be donating the free admission. Like I said, if I would have thought that, if there was gonna be a cost, I would have had you approach the mayor and the law director and everybody. So the only question left in my mind, because I think, like John said, I think this is still gonna be a very successful event. You guys have put your heart and soul into this, and I think I can speak for everybody up here. I honestly think everybody agrees what you've done is just a phenomenal job. As far as the photo ID, because I think that's the other big hurdle right now.
I think, and let's do narratives now. First of all, has the bicentennial committee offered to pay the cost? Because that is not been communicated to me. Is
They
that true?
did. Roger agreed, but said last week was the first he heard it, not some meeting with the bicentennial. He told me last week that was the first he heard the bicentennial needed to pony up the $2,000.
First we heard that we weren't being able to rent.
And we were told that the Friends didn't have the money. The money had to come from somewhere. So the city gave the money to the bicentennial gave the money back to the city, and the city approved it today at Board of Control to accept the $2,000.
Okay, so that's good. We've got,
So that's what I'm saying, that
Okay,
part
so
is
that's-
covered.
That's confirmed, okay. And you're right, I think, as I looked at this, as we kind of walked through with folks, we've talked, let me just ask people here, how many of you feel that the photo ID would limit participation in the event? Could I see your hands? Okay. And so that's what we've been working with, that kind of information input. So and I do think that is the real, there's one piece to this that I think is the real key. I would say that ID is, but go ahead, Sandy.
With all due respect, I'd like to endorse this group, and I, as a taxpayer, I live at 301 East Frontier, but I'm also somebody who invested 3 years as the pool manager for this community, and I embrace that pool. I was so happy to see that it opened again. But the sad part about it, and I have another role in this community, some of you know, some of you don't, but the other part of it is that pool used to be a place for our children to go because they had no other place to go. When you asked a question, a legitimate question, what are we going to, who would watch those children? Well, that is exactly why we pay lifeguards. That is their job, to watch those children in the pool. When I managed that pool, there was a guard in every chair. We switched every hour. We had up to 2 to 3 that walked that pool constantly. There must have been 50 sets of eyes on that water. Never once did we have a kid drown. Never once did we have an accident. But I can say that. And that is because back in the day, there's a lifeguard that probably made $3 an hour doing that.
$3.86.
So
I remember my.
we have 51% of our population in our community that is without parents in the household, single parent. We also have 7+% of our population who is at poverty or below poverty. We know where they live, and we also know that they cannot take advantage of that pool for a number of reasons. You want to charge the child a reduced rate because they get free and reduced lunches at $4 a child. That is not going to happen for a family who doesn't have $10 at the end of the week. It's not going to happen. There has to be a way that we can help the children in our community. There has to be. And that pool is there exactly for that reason. That pool is not a money maker. We can never look at it that way because it sucks up energy, it takes up resources and all the chemicals and all the staff to run that pool. That pool is a gift to the children in our community. And if we can't do that, if we can't take care of our own children, then we should expect a lot of crime and kids walking the street and getting into trouble, because that's exactly what they're going to do. And I just want to close with this. That pool's been closed long enough. We have 2 generations of people in our community that have never learned to swim. So we need to really think about that pool. It's more than just about the bicentennial. And by the way, we have people coming from all over the country to come to this event as a reunion for Parks and Recreation. We used to do a lot of things in our parks. I don't see kids in our parks anymore, and that breaks my heart. So I hope that this group can think of a way to make it different for our children. Maybe we can start with the bicentennial.
Well, I think the first question is, we have 4 minutes before the live meeting, so we have to recess into that, I guess, or go up to that. And I don't know exactly if there's been a request to modify the rules or relax all the rules. I guess if there has to be council action, we may have to either, well, I don't know if we could do it today, but we'd have to have another meeting between now and next week to solve the problem, or I'm not really sure what the request is gonna have to be, if it's relaxing all the rules, or, again, we have recommendations from our law department that we can't, so I'm not sure where that keeps us. So that's something to think about. Thanks for addressing the concerns. We'll have to make a determination. We're gonna have a meeting next week, or later this week again, to address this issue, because we have 4 minutes to get to a live meeting, so. I don't know, we can't really take any action right now because we don't have enough information.
Do we have an executive session?
We do have an executive session after council during the
Yes.
time that we
Okay,
have.
that's that.
It's gonna be a long night. We'll be done about 10:30, so. Okay. But we appreciate all your concerns, but we have to go to the meeting. We can't take any more questions, so this finance meeting is adjourned. Thank you.